The ashes were still warm. The remains of New Terra outposts lay scattered across the ground as if they had never been part of a structure at all. The fires had died out, but smoke still curled up from the ruins, gray and heavy, a reminder of the attack that had ended just hours ago. Captain Jason Holt wasn't a man easily moved. 15 years of service in the Interplanetary Defense Force had forged him into cold steel. But as he moved through what remained of this frontier base, his ice-blue eyes couldn't hide the grief. "Max, check the eastern perimeter," he commanded, his voice deep and raspy. The large black and tan German shepherd beside him gave a short bark in response before bounding away, disappearing into the smoke and rubble. Jason checked the plasma rifle at his side. This was the third time this month the Seraphons had attacked a human outpost, and they never left survivors. No one understood why. After 8 months of peace negotiations, suddenly everything had fallen apart. Max's urgent barking echoed from a distance. "I'm coming!" Jason called out, his heart beating faster as he made his way through the rubble. He knew that bark. Max had found something, or someone. He found Max standing before a pile of twisted metal. The dog wasn't barking anymore, but his entire body was tense in alert posture. Then Jason saw her. Lying amid the debris was a Seraphon. Blue skin that glimmered in the sunlight, and hair, if it could be called hair, that looked like translucent crystals emitting a faint glow. She was small compared to most Seraphons he had seen, and she was badly wounded. "Back away, Max," Jason ordered, drawing his weapon but not aiming it. This was the enemy, one of the species that had killed hundreds of his kind. He should call command immediately, but Max didn't obey. Instead, he whimpered softly and moved closer, lowering his nose to sniff the injured alien. "Max!" Jason's voice was sharp, but it was too late. The dog had reached the Seraphon, and the strangest thing happened. Her eyes opened. Not the wild animal eyes Jason had seen in military reports. Large, deep violet eyes with specks of light like stars. And they were filled with fear. She tried to back away at the sight of Max, but pain made her cry out. A sound like breaking crystals, so painful that Jason felt it vibrate in his own chest. Surprisingly, Max didn't attack. He simply lay down, head on his front paws, his gentle brown eyes looking directly at the alien. A gesture Max only made when he wanted to reassure someone. "I should report this," Jason whispered to himself. "Those are the orders. Capture any surviving Seraphons." But when the alien extended a trembling hand and Max gently licked the delicate blue fingers, Jason knew he couldn't follow protocol. "God, I'm going to regret this," he muttered, holstering his weapon and stepping forward. "I'm not going to hurt you," Jason said, hands raised in the universal gesture of peace. "Let me help." Though they didn't speak the same language, he knew she understood. All Seraphons carried advanced translation devices within their bodies. The alien nodded weakly, her eyes still filled with suspicion. Ignoring every principle of his training, Jason gently lifted her into his arms. She was surprisingly light, as if her bones were hollow. And she was cold. Not dead cold, but cool like crystal in the shade. "Max, let's go. Quick." Moving through the ruins, Jason headed toward his scout ship, the Starbound Hope, docked discreetly behind a large rock formation. He'd always believed in preparation, and today that would save someone's life, or end his career. The ship was still perfectly hidden under optical camouflage. Jason hurriedly opened the rear hatch and slipped inside Max, close at his heels. "Let's get you down here," he said to himself as he moved into the small medical bay of the vessel. With a severely injured Seraphon in his arms, every second counted. The medical scanner shrieked as it detected that Jason wasn't treating a human. "Override protocol, code Holt Alpha 64, he commanded. The scanner paused for a moment as if thinking, then beeped in compliance. "First and last time I use an override code for an alien," he muttered, laying the Seraphon on the examination table. As the scanner began its work, Jason observed her face. Under the clear light of the medical bay, he noticed the intricate patterns on her skin. Complex designs ran along her cheekbones and neck like delicate circuitry emitting a faint glow. "Severe wound to the left side," he read from the screen. "Unfamiliar internal organs, but basic structure similar." He trailed off as he saw the deeper scan images. "Self-healing mechanism active, but too slow," he mumbled. "Need to accelerate that process." Jason wasn't a doctor, but he had been trained in basic field medicine. He had never treated a Seraphon, but he knew fundamental biological principles, circulatory system, energy exchange, and hopefully enough to keep her alive. "Activate emergency protocol Delta," he ordered. The medical bay hummed as energy fields enveloped the examination table. "Administer tissue regeneration solution to the wounded area." The Seraphon's body tensed in pain as the transparent solution began flooding into her wound, but her eyes remained closed, showing no signs of consciousness. "So," Jason sighed, settling into a nearby chair, Max lying at his feet. "What do we do with you now, alien lady?" Hours passed in silence, with only the steady sounds of machinery and Max's gentle breathing. Jason had fallen asleep in the chair, exhausted after days without rest. He jolted awake at a sound, half like ringing crystal, half like singing. His eyes flew open. The Seraphon was awake and trying to sit up, her face tense and guarded. Hey, careful," Jason said, his voice rough from sleep. "You're still recovering." Her eyes widened in alarm as she saw him more clearly in the light. She backed away on the table, despite the pain evident on her face. "I did not consent to capture," she said, her voice strange, as if each word was a separate musical note. Jason raised his hands. "Nobody's capturing you. I found you wounded at the outpost. I'm just helping." She looked at him skeptically. "Humans do not help Seraphons." "Well, consider me the exception," Jason said, trying not to sound too sarcastic. "You're alive, aren't you? Who are you anyway?" The Seraphon hesitated, clearly battling an internal struggle about whether to reveal information. Then Max intervened again. The dog stood up, wagging his tail and moving to the side of the table, looking at her with the curious, friendly gaze he gave to everyone. Something changed in the Seraphon's expression. She slowly extended her hand and Max licked her fingers again, tail still wagging. "This animal does not fear me," she said, her voice softening. "Max doesn't fear much," Jason said with a small smile, "but he's excellent at judging character." She looked down at Max for a long moment, then back at Jason. "I am Solari Vaughn." Jason froze. He knew that name. Everyone serving on the frontier did. "Vayan, as in General Vayan, commander of the Seraphon fleet?" Solari nodded sharply. "He is my father." Jason felt his stomach knot. He hadn't just saved any Seraphon. He had just rescued the daughter of the commander of the forces attacking human outposts. The daughter of humanity's most dangerous declared enemy. "Well," he said, trying to keep his voice steady, "that complicates things." The next 12 hours passed in an uneasy truce. Jason kept his distance, monitoring Solari's recovery from across the room. Max, however, had completely abandoned any sense of caution and lay curled up near the examination table, occasionally receiving gentle strokes from blue fingers. "Your ship is small," Solari observed, breaking a long silence. "Not military standard." Jason glanced around the cramped quarters of the starbound Hope. "Scout class, faster than military vessels, less noticeable, less regulation," Solari added, her star-flecked eyes studying him. "Like it's captain." A warning alarm cut their conversation. Jason moved quickly to the cockpit. "Proximity alert," he muttered, checking the sensors. "Human patrol. 2 vessels sweep formation." He looked back at Solari, who had tensed visibly. "Stay quiet. They're running standard scans." The tension in the small ship was palpable as the patrol ships passed overhead. Jason watched the scanner, his jaw tight. If they detected a Seraphon life sign, the communication system crackled to life. "Scout vessel starbound. Hope, this is Commander Kira Sloan of the IDF Vigilance. Identify yourself and state your purpose in restricted zone." Jason's heart skipped. Commander Sloan, Samo, his former commanding officer, the woman who had recruited him into special operations before he requested transfer to frontier duty. "This is Captain Jason Holt," he responded, keeping his voice level. "Conducting a reconnaissance of attack site per Section 7 protocols." A pause. "Well, that's not your assignment, Holt. You were supposed to be halfway to Proxima Station by now." Jason swallowed hard. "Detoured when I received distress signals. Found none alive at the outpost. Completing scan now." Another pause, longer this time. When Sloan's voice returned, it was quieter, almost personal. "Your readings are unusual, Captain. Something you want to tell me?" Jason's eyes darted to the medical bay where Solari watched him, her expression unreadable. "Just some interference from the debris. Nothing conclusive to report yet. Sloane's voice carried a note of suspicion. Complete your scan and report to Proxima immediately after. That's an order this time, Holt. Understood, Commander. The communication cut and Jason exhaled slowly, his shoulders dropping. She knows, Solari said quietly from the doorway, leaning against it for support. She suspects, Jason corrected, turning to face her. But she didn't push. That means something. Solari's crystalline hair shimmered as she tilted her head. Why didn't you tell her about me? I am valuable intelligence. Good question, Jason said more to himself than to her. He genuinely didn't know why he was protecting her. Military protocol was clear. Duty was clear, and yet, Max patted over to him, nudging his hand with his nose. Jason absently scratched behind the dog's ears. Why were your people attacking the outpost, he asked finally. 8 months of peace talks, and suddenly you're hitting every human settlement in the sector. Why? Solari's face hardened, the glowing patterns on her skin pulsing slightly brighter. You really don't know. Would I ask if I did? She moved carefully back to the examination table sitting on its edge. The substance your kind has been mining. The blue crystal you call azurite. She touched her own skin. It's not just a mineral to us, it's part of us. Jason frowned. What do you mean? Your scientists never wondered why it's only found on planets where Seraphons once lived. Her voice had taken on a bitter edge. It's our life essence crystallized over generations. Our ancestors. Jason felt a cold wave wash over him. Are you saying we've been mining your dead? Not just mining them, Solari said, her voice breaking slightly. Processing them, burning them for fuel. My father tried explaining this in your peace talks, but your leaders wouldn't listen. They claimed it was unsubstantiated alien superstition, so he decided to show them how serious we were. Jason ran his hand through his short hair, mind racing. This changed everything, if she was telling the truth. I never heard any of this. Would it have mattered? Solari challenged. When has humanity ever given up a profitable resource for ethical concerns? Max whined suddenly, moving between them as if sensing the rising tension. He looked up at Solari, then at Jason, tail wagging hesitantly. Jason couldn't help but smile slightly. The peacemaker, he said, nodding toward Max, always trying to keep everyone calm. Something softened in Solari's expression as she looked at the dog. He is intuitive, unlike most humans. He's better than most of us, Jason admitted. Look, I need to think about this. If what you're saying is true, it is true, she interrupted firmly. If it's true, he continued, then we need to get this information to the right people, people who will actually listen. Solari looked doubtful. And who would that be? Before Jason could answer, another alarm blared, different from the proximity alert. This one was shrieking in rapid pulses. What is it? Solari asked, tensing again. Jason was already moving to the cockpit controls. Someone's trying to override our airlock. We're being boarded. Get back, Jason ordered, drawing his plasma rifle. Hide in the storage compartment. Solari didn't move. Who are they? Not military, Jason said, checking the external camera feed. Wrong approach pattern. Probably mercenaries? Pirates. 3 figures in mismatched armor were attaching something to the airlock door. Not standard military equipment. Improvised breaching charges. Pirates, Solari repeated slowly. Here for me. Jason gave her a sharp look. Why would you think that? Because I'm valuable, she said simply. The daughter of General Vayan would fetch a high price from either side. The realization hit Jason like a physical blow. She was right. Any number of groups would pay handsomely for her. Human military hardliners, private corporate interests, even Seraphon rebels. The perfect high-value bargaining chip. Someone must have tracked my escape pod, Solari continued, or intercepted your communication with the commander. The airlock warning flashed red. They were almost through. Max guard, Jason commanded, pointing toward Solari. The German shepherd immediately took position in front of her, hackles raised. I won't leave you defenseless, Solari said, her voice suddenly stronger. She reached toward the glowing patterns on her arm, pressing a sequence. The patterns shifted, and suddenly a crystalline blade formed in her hand, extending from her forearm like an organic extension. Jason stared in surprise. That's handy. Seraphon Royal Guard training, she explained, taking a fighting stance despite her injuries. I'm not just a diplomatic ornament. The airlock exploded inward with a deafening crash. Smoke billowed through the corridor as 3 armored figures charged in. "Surrender the alien," the lead figure shouted. "We don't want it to hurt you, Holt." They knew his name. This wasn't random. This was targeted. Jason didn't hesitate. He fired a warning shot above their heads. "This is an IDF vessel, stand down." Instead of retreating, they opened fire. Jason ducked behind a bulkhead, returning fire methodically. One shot connected, sending a mercenary sprawling backward. Solari moved with surprising speed despite her injuries, her crystal blade deflecting a shot that would have hit Max. The dog lunged forward, clamping powerful jaws around an attacker's arm, dragging him to the ground. "The alien alive," one of them shouted, "stun only he." Jason used the distraction to line up another shot, dropping a second attacker. But the third had circled around, coming up behind the Solari with a stun baton raised. "Behind you," Jason shouted. Solari whirled, but not fast enough. The baton connected with her side, directly over her healing wound. She screamed a sound like shattering glass that made the very air vibrate. Her crystal blade dissipated as she collapsed. Max released his target and charged the third attacker, but the mercenary was ready. The stun baton connected with Max's flank, sending the dog yelping across the floor where he lay twitching. "Max!" Jason roared, abandoning cover to rush the attacker. Pure rage drove him forward as he slammed into the mercenary, sending them both crashing into the wall. The stun baton clattered to the floor as Jason drove his fist into the attacker's face again and again. When he finally stepped back, breathing hard, the mercenary wasn't moving. Jason immediately turned to Max, kneeling beside the dog. "Come on, buddy," he whispered, hands gently checking for injuries. Max's breathing was labored, and a nasty burn marked his side where the baton had connected. "You're gonna be okay. He needs help." Solari's voice was weak behind him. She had dragged herself to Max's side, her own wound reopened and leaking a luminous blue fluid. "You both do," Jason said grimly. "But we can't stay here. More could be coming." Solari placed a trembling hand on Max's injured side. "I can help him." "How you can barely help yourself right now." She looked up at Jason, her star-filled eyes intense. "There is a way, a Seraphon healing technique, but it requires a connection." "What kind of connection?" "A resonance pact," she said solemnly. "Normally reserved for deep bonds between my kind, but I believe it could work between species if the intent is pure." Jason looked skeptical. "And what exactly does this resonance pact involve?" "It links life energies temporarily," Solari explained, wincing as she shifted position. "It would allow me to use my healing abilities on Max, stabilizing him until proper treatment." "And the catch," Solari hesitated. "During the link, emotions and some memories are shared. The experience can be intense." As Jason looked down at Max, whose breathing was becoming more labored, his loyal companion who had stood by him through countless missions and lonely nights, there was no choice to make. "Do it," he said firmly. Solari nodded, placing one hand on Max and extending the other toward Jason. "Take my hand. Focus on your bond with him." Jason clasped her blue fingers, surprised at how warm they now felt. "What now?" "Now," she said, the patterns on her skin beginning to glow brighter. "We begin." The world exploded into crystal light. Jason gasped as sensation flooded through him. Not pain, but overwhelming presence. Like suddenly being aware of every cell in his body, every breath, every heartbeat, and not just his own. He could feel Max, the dog's loyal spirit, his unwavering affection, his current pain. And beyond that, he felt Solari, ancient wisdom swirling with youthful defiance, deep sadness and fierce hope intertwined like stars in a distant galaxy. Images flashed through his mind, a crystalline city suspended between floating islands. Solemn ceremonies beneath 3 pale moons, the crushing grief of watching worlds fall, the betrayal of promises broken. "Focus," Solari's voice echoed both in his ears and somehow inside his mind. "Direct the energy toward healing." Jason concentrated on Max, on the image of him whole and healthy. He felt Solari's energy flow through their connected hands, amplified somehow by his own determination channeling toward the injured dog. The glowing patterns on Solari's skin extended outward, branching across Max's fur like luminous veins. Where they touched the burn wound, tiny crystals formed, sealing damaged tissue, rebuilding at a cellular level. The process seemed to last both an instant and an eternity. When the light finally faded, Jason found himself on his knees, breathing hard as if he'd run a marathon. Beside him, Solari slumped against the bulkhead, exhausted but smiling faintly. And between them, Max stirred, rising to his feet. The burn wound was covered in a thin layer of blue crystals that seemed to be gradually absorbing into his skin. He shook himself and moved to Jason, licking his face as if nothing had happened. "It worked," Jason whispered, running his hands through Max's fur in disbelief. "Of course it worked," Solari said, her voice weaker than before. The resonance was unusually strong. Jason looked at her, really looked at her, and something had fundamentally changed. He had seen her memories, felt her emotions. He knew her now in a way that words could never convey. And she knew him. "You lost your family in the first border skirmish," she said quietly. "That's why you requested frontier duty, to find meaning in their deaths." Jason nodded, unable to speak for a moment. Those were memories he had shared with no one. "And you," he finally said, "you were trying to deliver a peace proposal when your ship was attacked. You weren't part of the military offensive." "I believed I could make my father listen," Solari confirmed. "I still do. But now the situation has escalated beyond what either of us anticipated." Jason helped her to her feet, supporting her weight as they moved toward the cockpit. "We need to get moving. Those mercenaries might have sent our location to others." As they settled into the pilot seats, Solari looked out at the stars. "Where will we go?" "Proxima Station," Jason decided. "Commander Sloan may be suspicious, but she's fair. If anyone will listen to what you have to say about the azurite mining, it's her. And if she doesn't..." Jason started the ignition sequence, the engines humming to life. "Then we find someone who will." As the Starbound Hope broke orbit, Jason's communications system activated again. This time it wasn't a direct contact, but a general broadcast. Commander Sloan's face appeared on the screen. "Attention all IDF personnel. Peace negotiations with the Seraphon Confederation have officially broken down. General Vaughn has issued an ultimatum: cease all mining operations in disputed territories within 48 hours or face full-scale war. All civilian personnel are ordered to evacuate border regions immediately. Military personnel stand ready for conflict protocols." The message repeated, then the screen went dark. Jason and Solari exchanged looks of shared dread. 48 hours, Jason said grimly. "That's our window." "To do what exactly?" Jason's jaw set in determination. "To stop a war." The journey to Proxima Station was tense but uneventful. Jason spent most of it trying to contact Commander Sloan directly, but all channels were overwhelmed with emergency traffic. The Resonance Pact had left an unexpected aftermath. Though the direct connection had ended, Jason found himself acutely aware of Solari's emotional state. Occasionally, he would catch glimpses of her thoughts, not words, but impressions, feelings. From her reactions, he suspected she experienced the same with him. "It normally fades within a few days," she explained when he asked about it. "Between Seraphons, it can sometimes become permanent, but between different species..." She trailed off, uncertain. "Is that why you were reluctant to use it?" She nodded. "It's considered intimate, sacred even. To share it with an outsider was unthinkable. But Max needed help, and you cared for him so deeply." Max, fully recovered and seemingly unfazed by his near-death experience, padded between them, accepting affection from both. "He's the bridge," Jason said, scratching under the dog's chin, "between our worlds." "Perhaps there could be others," Solari suggested carefully. As they approached Proxima Station, Jason received clearance to dock at a private bay, not standard procedure. When they disembarked, Commander Sloan was waiting along with a small security team. "Captain Holt?" She said, her expression neutral but her eyes sharp. "You're overdue and off course. Care to explain why?" Before Jason could answer, Sloan's gaze shifted to Solari, who stood proudly despite her injuries. The security team immediately raised their weapons. "Stand down," Sloan ordered, surprising everyone. She stepped forward, examining Solari with clinical interest. "You must be someone important for my former protege to risk court-martial." "Commander," Jason started. "I can explain. Save it for the debriefing." Sloan cut him off. "Both of you follow me, privately." She glanced at Max. "The dog too, I suppose." In Sloane's private office, away from prying eyes and ears, Jason explained everything. Finding Solari, learning about the Azurite, the mercenary attack, and finally the Resonance Pact. Sloane listened without interruption, her face revealing nothing. When he finished, she turned to Solari. "Is this true about the Azurite being your ancestors?" "It is," Solari confirmed. "Our bodies crystallize after death. Over generations, these formations grow and change. They remain connected to our collective consciousness in ways your science might not understand. So when we mine and process these crystals, you are destroying our history, our spiritual connection to our past." Solari finished. "It would be like someone desecrating your most sacred burial grounds for fuel." Sloane was silent for a long moment. "Why hasn't your father made this clear in the negotiations?" "He has tried," Solari insisted, "but your negotiators dismissed it as superstition, not science. They demanded proof that we cannot provide in your terms." "And now we're on the brink of war," Sloane said heavily. Jason leaned forward. "Commander, there has to be a way to demonstrate the truth of this, to make people understand what's really at stake." "The resonance," Solari said suddenly, her eyes brightening with inspiration. "If select humans could experience it, feel the connection as Jason did. You want to perform some alien ritual on our military and political leaders?" Sloane asked skeptically. "Not exactly," Jason said, understanding where Solari was going. "But what if we could demonstrate it publicly, show the connection in a way everyone could witness?" Sloane looked between them. "What are you suggesting?" "The final peace summit," Jason said. "Almost. It's still scheduled for tomorrow, right before the ultimatum expires." Sloane nodded slowly. "Then we use that platform," he continued, growing more animated. "Solari and I demonstrate the Resonance Pact, show that humans and Seraphons can connect, can understand each other on a fundamental level." "A public spectacle won't change mining policy," Sloane argued. "No," Solari agreed, "but it might open minds enough to extend the negotiations to take our claims seriously." "And if it fails?" Sloane asked. Jason met her gaze steadily. "Then I'll have tried everything to prevent a war that will cost millions of lives on both sides." "Can you say the same?" The challenge hung in the air between them. Finally, Sloane's stern expression cracked into a small, reluctant smile. "You always were a stubborn idealist, Holt." She stood up. "I can get you both into the summit. The rest is up to you." As Sloane left to make arrangements, Jason turned to Solari. "Can we actually do this on a larger scale?" "The resonance is normally intimate between two individuals," Solari admitted. "But there are ancient accounts of mass resonance ceremonies. If we amplify it somehow..." She looked down at the crystals still faintly visible on Max's healed side. "Perhaps with the right preparation." Jason nodded, determination setting in. "Then we have work to do." The Grand Assembly Hall of Proxima Station had never been so tense. Human diplomats and military officials sat on one side, Seraphon representatives on the other. The space between them might as well have been an abyss. At the head of the Seraphon delegation sat General Vayan himself, tall, imposing, his crystalline features more angular than Solari's, the patterns on his blue skin forming complex militant designs. His eyes, like his daughter's, contained stars, but his burned with contained fury. The human delegation was led by Admiral Chen, a severe woman whose reputation for tactical brilliance was matched only by her unwavering stance on human expansion rights. Commander Sloane had secured positions for Jason and Solari at the rear of the hall, along with Max, whose presence had raised eyebrows, but was permitted due to Sloane's insistence that he was a certified emotional support animal. "In the moment the formal greetings end, we move," Jason whispered to Solari. "Are you sure you're strong enough for this?" She nodded, though her skin had paled to a lighter blue with the strain of recovery. "I've prepared the resonance crystals." She showed him a small pouch of luminous shards, fragments collected from her own healing process charged through a night of meditation. "And you're sure they'll amplify us?" "Theoretically," she said with a small smile. "We're breaking new ground here." Admiral Chen had started speaking, her voice cool and measured, as she reiterated the human position. Mining rights were non-negotiable. Seraphon religious concerns were respected but unverifiable, and threats of military action would not be tolerated. General Vayan's posture grew increasingly rigid with each word. When it was his turn to speak, his deep, resonant voice filled the hall. "We have tried words. We have tried reason. We have tried peaceful demonstration. You continue to desecrate our ancestors and call it progress. His gaze swept the human delegation. In 24 hours, we will show you the meaning of desecration. Murmurs broke out across the hall. This wasn't negotiation. It was the formalization of war. Jason nodded to Solari. It was now or never. They moved forward together, Max padding faithfully beside them. As they approached the central floor between the delegations, security personnel tensed hands, moving to weapons. "What is the meaning of this interruption?" Admiral Chen demanded. Admiral General Commander Sloan stood addressing both leaders. "I present Captain Jason Holt and Princess Solari Vian, who request the right to demonstrate something vital to these negotiations." "My daughter!" General Van's voice was a mixture of shock and fury as he recognized Solari. "How are you here with a human?" Solari stepped forward, head high despite the whispers erupting around her. "Father, I was injured in the attack on New Terra. Captain Holt saved my life." "This is highly irregular," Admiral Chen protested. "So is War Admiral," Jason said clearly, his voice carrying across the hall. "And that's exactly what we're facing, unless you all see what we've discovered." "And what might that be, Captain?" the Admiral asked coldly. Jason looked at Solari, who nodded encouragingly. "A connection, a way to understand each other beyond words and politics, through the Seraphon Resonance Pact." General Vayan stood abruptly. "The resonance is sacred. It is not for humans. And yet, Father, it has already been shared," Solari said, gesturing to Max, whose side still glimmered faintly with blue crystals. "Captain Holt and I formed a resonance to save his companion. It succeeded beyond what I thought possible." The hall had fallen completely silent. The Resonance Pact was known to humans only as a mysterious Seraphon ritual, sometimes mentioned in anthropological texts, but never fully explained. "What exactly are you proposing?" Admiral Chen asked, curiosity momentarily overcoming her skepticism. "A demonstration," Jason explained. "Solari and I will perform the Resonance Pact here, before all of you. What we experience will be projected through these." He gestured to the crystals Solari now held. "You will all witness what connection between our species truly means." Protests erupted from both delegations. It was too risky, too unprecedented, too sacred, too alien. "Enough!" General Vayan's voice cut through the chaos. He stepped down from the platform, moving toward his daughter. Up close, his presence was even more intimidating, but Solari didn't flinch. "You would share our most sacred connection with these miners of the dead?" he asked her quietly. "I already have, Father," she replied. "And in doing so, I learned that they truly don't understand what they're doing. How can we condemn them for ignorance we refuse to cure?" The general studied her, then looked at Jason, his star-filled eyes searching. "You, human, you saved my daughter." "Yes, sir," Jason answered simply. "Why?" "Because it was right," Jason said. "The same reason I'm standing here now trying to stop this war." Something shifted in the general's expression, not quite softening, but a recognition. He turned to address the assembly. "My daughter has always been idealistic, but she has never been wrong about matters of the heart." He gestured to the center of the floor. "I will permit this demonstration." Admiral Chen looked like she wanted to object, but sensed the momentum shifting. "Very well, but any sign of danger and security will intervene." Jason and Solari moved to the center of the hall, Max sitting attentively beside them. Solari arranged the crystals in a circle around them, then took Jason's hands in hers. "Are you ready?" she asked softly. He nodded, feeling strangely calm, despite hundreds of eyes watching them. "Remember," she whispered, "focus on what connects us all, not just you and me, but all conscious beings." As Solari began the resonance chant, a sound like crystal bells filled the air. The patterns on her skin began to glow brighter than ever before. The crystals around them responded, their light pulsing in rhythm with her words. Jason closed his eyes, focusing as she had taught him. At first, there was nothing but darkness and the musical sound of her voice. Then, like a wave breaking through a dam, sensation flooded through him. It was exponentially more powerful than their first connection. He felt Solari's presence, but also something vast beyond her. A collective consciousness, ancient and crystalline, echoing with millions of voices across time. He understood in that moment that the Azurite truly was alive in some fundamental way, not with individual consciousness, but as part of a greater whole. The crystals around them flared blindingly bright. Suddenly, the resonance expanded outward in a visible wave of blue-white energy. It washed over the front rows of delegates, then the second, then throughout the entire hall. Gasps and cries of surprise filled the air as humans and Seraphons alike experienced the connection. Not as deeply as Jason and Solari at the center, but enough to feel the truth. Admiral Chen staggered, gripping the edge of her podium. General Vayan fell to one knee, his stoic facade cracking as the resonance passed through him. Human security officers lowered their weapons, looking confused and awestruck. Seraphon diplomats bowed their heads, some weeping silently as the connection affirmed their deepest beliefs. In the center, Jason and Solari had become the eye of a storm of light and emotion. Their joined hands glowed so brightly that they appeared translucent, the energy flowing between them, visible to all. Max stood beside them, his fur shimmering with blue light, head raised as if howling, though no sound came from him. He had become a conduit, amplifying the resonance beyond what either of them could have achieved alone. Slowly, the light began to fade. The crystals around them dimmed and then crumbled to dust. Jason and Solari separated, both collapsing to their knees in exhaustion. Silence filled the hall, not the tense silence of before, but something profound and thoughtful. Then Admiral Chen cleared her throat. For once, the formidable leader seemed at a loss for words. I felt them, the ancestors, the connection. General Vayan rose to his feet, looking at his daughter with new respect. As did I feel the human perspective. Their ignorance was genuine. He turned to Admiral Chen. They truly did not understand what they were mining. Jason helped Solari to her feet, both of them leaning on each other for support. Max pressed against their legs, steadying them. You all know, Jason addressed the assembly, his voice hoarse. The azurite isn't just a resource. It's their history, their spiritual foundation, their connection to their past. Every crystal we mine and process severs that connection forever. There must be alternatives. Commander Sloan spoke up from her position. Other energy sources we can develop. And there are unconsecrated regions, Solari added. Areas where mining would not disturb our ancestors. We can show you where. Admiral Chen and General Vayan looked at each other across the divide that had seemed so unbridgeable just minutes before. I propose we extend negotiations for 30 days, Chen said finally, with an immediate halt to mining operations in all disputed territories while we investigate alternatives. Acceptable, General Vayan replied, provided human scientists work alongside Seraphon guides to verify consecrated regions. Agreed, Chen nodded. Just like that, the path to war had been diverted. Not resolved, there would be months of difficult negotiations ahead, corporate interest to placate hardliners on both sides to convince. But the immediate threat had passed. As the delegates began to discuss logistics, Jason, Solari, and Max slipped away to a quiet alcove. We did it, Jason said, still dazed from the experience. We showed them a possibility, Solari corrected gently. The rest will be up to them. She reached down to stroke Max's head, and up to bridges like this one. What happens now, Jason asked. To you, I mean? Solari looked thoughtful. My father will want me to return to our home world, to explain what happened, how the resonance worked on such a scale. And will you go? She met his eyes, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Eventually. But first, I think there's more work for us to do here. More bridges to build. Us, Jason raised an eyebrow. The resonance we shared, she began, then paused, searching for words. It doesn't typically fade between those who are compatible on a deeper level. Jason felt a warmth spread through him that had nothing to do with the resonance and everything to do with the way she was looking at him. And so you're saying we're stuck with each other? I believe your people call it destiny, she replied with a musical laugh. Max barked, one's tail wagging furiously as if confirming her words. Well, Jason said, reaching for her hand and feeling that now familiar current pass between them. I've never been one to argue with destiny. Or with him. He nodded toward Max. Outside the viewports of Proxima Station, stars glittered in the vastness of space. The same stars that existed in Solari's eyes, and now in some small way in Jason's soul. Between their two worlds, the first true bridge had been built. Not of treaties or technology, but of understanding, of resonance. And somewhere in that shared connection, the future had already begun. 3 months later, the first joint Human Seraphon Commission presented its findings. The azurite mining operations were restructured, focusing only on designated, unconsecrated regions, identified by Seraphons spiritual leaders. Research into alternative energy sources received unprecedented funding. Jason declined reinstatement to his former position instead, accepting a new role as liaison between human and Seraphon territories. The starbound Hope became a familiar sight along the borders, carrying messages, mediating disputes, and occasionally rescuing those in need, regardless of fees. Solari divided her time between diplomatic duties and working alongside Jason. The resonance between them had indeed not faded, but deepened, becoming a symbol of what was possible between their peoples. And Max, now sporting a permanent streak of crystalline blue in his fur, remained the beloved companion to both, the unexpected bridge that had helped save two civilizations from the brink of war. In quiet moments when the three of them stood together watching distant stars, Jason sometimes reflected on how close they had come to losing everything, and how the simple act of compassion, stopping to help an injured enemy, had changed the course of history. Humanity had proven itself worthy not through dominance or power, but through connection, through understanding, through the very qualities that had once been dismissed as weaknesses in the face of an expanding universe. It wasn't the end of all conflicts, nor a perfect solution to centuries of mistrust, but it was a beginning, and sometimes beginnings were enough.